If you want to achieve in this life, you need to set your goals higher.
I'm already pretty high.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Voluntary Hippie Radio. This is JG Vibes on UCY.tv. You can find out more information about my books, the podcast archives, and my articles at AOTMR.com. AOTMR is the acronym for my book, Alchemy of the Modern Renaissance, which is an 87-chapter counterculture textbook, which you can find all of the information for at my website. Today I'm going to play an interview that I had on an awesome show this past week, the Rob and Freeland show on Oracle Broadcasting. I was actually on both shows on two separate hours, and I kind of spliced them together, and we'll be playing them shortly. First, though, I'm going to go over an article that I did this past week that was touched on during the interview. And I also wanted to bring up an awesome presentation that I actually had the pleasure to see live this weekend in Philadelphia at Liberty's Pub. It was the fundraiser that Mark Passio put together for the Free Your Mind conference. And if you haven't heard about this conference yet, you should really check it out. freeyourmindconference.com is where you can find all the information. And it's a ton of great speakers. It's probably going to be one of the biggest events of this kind on the East Coast. Last year was just incredible. You could see a lot of the footage from last year as well. And this fundraiser was really, really cool. Basically, Mark Passio broke down all three of the Matrix movies, described what each of them meant, what the whole purpose was, all of the underlying occult themes, and there was just so much stuff that I had never even noticed before about this movie that was just so insanely deep. And the overall theme of the whole trilogy was basically that the Matrix is the system of authoritarian control that our species has been living under for a long time. And it is the way that it is because of problems in the human psyche. And the way to get out of it is just to keep on going, keep on fighting, and just persevere until you think it's the end of the line. And that's exactly what happened in the Matrix. And that overall theme of perseverance is something that really, really didn't dawn on me until I saw that presentation. So it was really great. And luckily there was somebody who actually was able to get it onto YouTube. So I don't think it's out there yet, but it will be. And when it is, I might play a little clip on the show or post the video to my website or something, because everyone really needs to check that out. So there's going to be a different fundraiser every month in Philadelphia, and it's probably going to be just as good as this. So I suggest everybody get out there and support this, because there aren't many events like this on the East Coast. And the more successful this is, the better it'll be next year, and the more inclined other people will be to put together awesome events like this as well. So please, it's freeyourmindconference.com. You will not regret it at all. So the other thing that I wanted to get into real quick is actually this article that I just put out, 8 Reasons to End Prohibition of All Drugs Immediately. Now, this will help you kind of understand what we're talking about in the interview. And as many of you know, this is a very important topic for me, because I'm a victim of this drug war myself. Most of the people that I know are victims of this drug war. And not only that, this is the one reason that they have to violate your rights without any recourse. They just say, oh, I smell some weed, and they can knock down your door and fill you with 70 bullets like they just did with that Marine who didn't even have any weed in his house. So let me start off by reading this article. The drug war is one of the most misunderstood subjects in the mainstream political dialogue, even among people who are sympathetic to the plight of responsible drug users. It is rare for someone to come out and say that all drugs should be legal, but in all honesty, this is the only logically consistent stance on the issue. To say that some drugs should be legal while others should not is still giving credence to the punishment paradigm and overlooking the external consequences of drug prohibition, or prohibition of any object for that matter. There is no doubt that drug abuse is a serious issue in our culture, primarily because people are so depressed and beaten down that they self-medicate just to be able to tolerate the average day. However, prohibition policy is a policy of violence, because if you happen to be caught with any of these banned items, you will be forcefully taken from your home and held against your will in a cage. And if you dare to prevent this kidnap from taking place, you will inevitably be killed. This is the fundamental issue surrounding the drug war, and this is what really needs to be focused on. Instead of bickering over how to slightly reform drug policy or arguing about which drugs are more harmful than others, we need to be pointing out that prohibition itself is an inherently violent policy that rests upon the Stone Age concept of punishment. As I alluded to earlier, there are many external factors that are affected by the drug war that many people don't take into account. This is because when you carry out acts of violence, even in the form of punishment, you then create a ripple effect which extends far beyond the bounds of the original circumstance to affect many innocent people down the line. The following list delves into those external factors to illustrate how drug users and non-users alike would be a lot better off if prohibition ended immediately. And I'm just going to go through this list real quick. It says reduce violent crime, improve seller accountability and drug safety, reduce drug availability to children, reduce nonviolent prisoner population, real crime can be dealt with, encourage genuine treatment for addicts, prevent drug overdoses, and protect individual rights. Now, the first concept here is to reduce violent crime. The steady increase in violent crime over the past few decades is directly correlated with the escalation of the drug war. As we saw during times of alcohol prohibition, when you ban any inanimate object, you create an incentive for people to get involved in the black market distribution of that object. Since there is no accountability or means of peaceful dispute resolution within the black market, buyers and sellers are forced to resort to violence as their sole means of handling disagreements. Eventually, this violence spills over into the everyday world and affects everyone's lives. No one could imagine Budweiser and Miller Lite in a back alley gunfight, but less than a century ago during alcohol prohibition, distributors of the drug were involved in shootouts on a regular basis, just as drug gangs are today. Of course, all of this violent crime came to an immediate end when alcohol was legalized. However, it was not long before the establishment found a new crusade in the drug war, which allowed them to continue the same policy, just with different substances. And now here is the second concept on the list, that is improving seller accountability and drug safety. In the black market, one of the major drawbacks is that there is no accountability among the people selling the drug. Since anyone can get kidnapped and thrown in the cage for even dealing with the stuff, it really doesn't make sense for people to be plastering their names and logos all over the product. In this age of corporate mercantilism, logos and branding may seem like a tacky idea, but when looking at the black market, we can see value in such things. Someone who is selling a product with their name on it is going to go through far greater lengths to ensure the quality of their product, as opposed to someone who would remain anonymous. This anonymity creates an incentive for people to be dishonest with what they sell. This could lead to rip-offs or downright contamination of the drug with unwanted harmful substances. This is why there was bathtub gin that would make you go blind if you drank it during Prohibition. This is also the reason why some of the harder street drugs today are cut with toxic chemicals that increase the chance of overdose tenfold. The fact that the drugs need to be smuggled also creates the incentive to make drugs more potent and thus, in some circumstances, more dangerous. The increased potency and decreased availability inevitably leads to a massive increase in cost. The increased cost is a whole other issue with its own unique side effects in regards to drug safety. When the price of the real drugs go up, people start huffing paint thinner, smoking bath salts, or cooking up crystal meth in their basements, which is then even many times more dangerous than the unbranded drugs on the black market. Could also reduce drug availability to children by rendering Prohibition obsolete. Many children have houses that are filled with alcohol, yet most of them find it way easier to get drugs than to get alcohol, even though alcohol is legal. If there were no legal age restrictions on alcohol, the societal and family norms would be just as effective at deterring children from drugs than a formal prohibition policy. If we look overseas at countries that don't have age restrictions on alcohol, younger people are oftentimes much more mature and informed about its effects than children in the West, and are more likely to make responsible decisions about mind-altering substances. In Portugal, where drugs have been decriminalized for some time now, there has actually been a double-digit drop in drug use by school-aged children. Repealing Prohibition would also reduce nonviolent prisoner population, which is obviously insane in this country. A vast majority of the prisoners in the United States are there for nonviolent crimes, many of which stem from the drug war. Currently, there are more people in the U.S. prisons than there were in the gulags of Soviet Russia at its worst. Putting nonviolent people in cages, bringing violence against nonviolent people, is a horrible violation of natural law. However, if you have no sympathy or compassion for the casualties in this drug war, I would point again to the external consequences which affect even the most vocal prohibitionist. According to the most cited judge in the United States, Richard A. Posner, the government spends $41.3 billion per year of your tax money on law enforcement measures against mostly small-time drug users. Real crime could also be dealt with if we repealed Prohibition. Even in areas with a declining homicide rate, the murder cases that are going unsolved are continuing to climb. Police departments and bureaucrats have a million excuses, but the drug war is one of the primary reasons for this occurrence. On one hand, indiscriminate killings become more common than crimes of passion that are easy to figure out. But there is a much more sinister aspect of this as well. If you look at the rate of incarcerations for drug offenses and how incredibly often drug cases are solved and found in favor of the state, it becomes obvious that police have more of an incentive in their day-to-day activities to hunt down drug dealers than they do to hunt down murderers. These people aren't selfless public servants as the propaganda on primetime television would lead you to believe. They are just average people, just like you and me. They will even tell you, "I'm just doing my job." So like most of us, when they are on the job, they try to get the most amount of money for the least amount of work. And murder cases are really, really tough. So what do you think's going to happen? A cop could even miss his quota by taking the time and effort to hunt down a murderer, instead of grabbing a kid with a bag of pot, which is a lot easier to find and a lot easier to catch and a lot easier to prosecute as well. Quotas are another thing that many police departments deny, but time and time again, evidence surfaces that proves otherwise. Recently, a former NYPD officer has come forward saying that he used to ticket dead people just to meet his quota. This is not to say that all cops are nasty people, but the way that their jobs are monopolized by the state and focused on the drug war corrupts their positions and forces them to hurt innocent people and violate people's rights, even if they have the best of intentions. Repealing Prohibition would also encourage genuine treatment for addicts. As a result of international drug treaties, most of the world has remained trapped in a punishment mindset when it comes to dealing with the social problem of drug addiction. While an addiction may be problematic for the person involved and everyone that they come in contact with, they are not criminal until they actually hurt someone or damage their property, and even then, they are only a criminal because of the aforementioned transgression, not because of their drug addiction. Even the treatment that we see today is not genuine because it is forced on people and doesn't address the reasons why they are doing the drugs in the first place. In other words, today's treatment programs just try to bash the idea that drugs are bad, okay, into people's heads, instead of really communicating with them, treating them like human beings, and overcoming the underlying issues in their lives that are pushing them towards lives of drug addiction. Now, repealing prohibition would also prevent drug overdoses. As I mentioned earlier, most drug overdoses that happen today wouldn't occur if it wasn't for the artificially high potency of drugs. However, what is even more sad is that of those overdoses that do happen, many more of them could have been prevented, but were not, because witnesses were too afraid of the police getting involved to call for help. Right now, 9 states out of 50 in the U.S. currently have Good Samaritan laws to give legal amnesty to anyone who brings an overdosing person to the hospital. But that measure wouldn't even be necessary if prohibition wasn't a factor in the first place. The fact that people are actually afraid to call an ambulance in this country should really tell you something about the level that this police state has risen to. And finally, the most important thing about this is repealing prohibition would protect individual rights. Thanks to the drug war, merely on the whim of saying that they smell something, cops are now able to enter homes and search cars and totally violate the rights of nonviolent people. The drug war and terrorism are the 2 biggest excuses used to violate people's rights. Yet according to the National Safety Council, you are 8 times more likely to be killed by a police officer than a terrorist. The very existence of the drug war to begin with, or a prohibition on any object, is a fundamental violation of natural rights that should not exist in any civilized society. If you have any questions or disagreements, please feel free to email me at jgvibes@aotmr.com. And without any further delay, we could get into today's interview, so please enjoy it.
All right, back here on the roundtable version of the Robin Freeland Show. It is the Thursday edition of the broadcast. We have Jules with us now via Skype. He should be with us for the duration. We've also got John and Mass, and we've got our friend JG Vibe, who will be joining us for the entire second hour. We'll have a good conversation. We'll bring him up in just a moment. I just wanted to finish here with John. John, a quick little story here in Mass. I'm sure you're familiar with Beacon Hill, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Beacon Hill is probably one of the most expensive places to live in the Northeast, bar, say, parts of New York City. There's parts of New York City that are just, Fifth Ave, Upper East Side that'll blow Beacon Hill out of the water. Anyway, my grandmother and her sister owned an apartment complex on Beacon Hill, top of Beacon Hill, right by where the State House is. Government came in and they took the property from her and said, sorry, we got to take it through eminent domain, and they gave them fair market value. And within 10 years, their property, the value of their property was worth 7 times the amount they sold it to the government for.
So what was the reason for confiscating it?
Because they wanted to expand where the State House property was, and that just happened to be what their apartment building is. And now what's there is just like a wall and a field. There's not even really anything there. It's just part of the compound. They didn't even put like a building or anything there. It's just literally grass. They just kind of removed it, put a fence up, and it's just really what the apartment building was is just grass. Unbelievable. That's my government story for Boston.
Too bad it took so long for people to know it, to understand that they were being ripped off. I knew we were being ripped off, and this whole thing was a joke when I was 14 years old.
I wish I knew, John. It took me until my 30s. I was 30.
I was in my 30s.
I didn't know any of the details. I just knew something wasn't right, and that income tax and fluoride, and I just knew. I knew there's not something right here. I remember you had to go to court for something. The way they treated you in court.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. They treat you like you're a scumbag, and you're like, wait a minute, this is my country. I'm supposed to be a citizen in this country. Why are you acting like I'm some kind of enemy or something? Yeah. Anyway, John, I'm gonna let you go, man. I really appreciate your time. You always know that you're welcome here on the broadcast. Hope you have a great day today. Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, John. Take care, buddy. I think it was about was about 22, 23 years old, Jimmy. The first time I really kind of put it in perspective, I think I was getting baked, and I sat back and I went, who decided life is this way, that you're supposed to go to school until, you're a senior in high school, then you go to college for 4 years, and then you work every day, 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, and then you
retire someday and you drive around the country in an RV or whatever, Or
but yeah, I used to question
you spend your final 10 years of life, riding on a riding lawnmower,
right? Doing the
using
same
Scotch turf builder every year.
Doing the same crap over and over. I'm just like, really? That's life? That's all I have to look forward to? I forget what it was. I just noticed some older neighbor or something, and I just saw his existence and went, is that what I have to look forward to? Just the same repetitive crap over and over again? You get to a certain point in your life, and you just kind of consciously notice it's over. And then you look back at your life, and what'd you do? You just worked. I just worked and worked and worked.
I did nothing.
I just did a lot of work. Worked on my property, cut my grass.
Went to Hershey Park, went to the Grand Canyon. Went to Hershey Park.
The sad thing, guys?
Say again?
What? The sad thing is that though that looked boring 20 years ago, it doesn't now. I mean, wouldn't people love to have a job? Wouldn't people love in retirement to have the luxury and the money to be able to get into an RV, afford the gas, and go cross country?
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, all that's kind of been
right.
My
whole thing
is just a pipe dream now.
Right. No, I totally agree with you, Joel.
You ought to be able to do that when you're 30 if you want, though. You shouldn't have to work your entire life and just enjoy the last 10 years of your life.
I know. Those are they call them your golden years. Like, aren't your golden years like in your 20s or 30s when you have your full mental faculties and you're young and you have the energy? No. Isn't that your golden years?
I mean, dude, literally, I have yards that there's yards in my neighborhood that is... it's really, they're so big that no one can ever really mow them all at once unless they have these big, huge industrial mowers. So you see people out there every day mowing a different part of their lawn.
It's just a perpetual lawn mowing.
Yeah, just
every day. They take off Sunday.
Well, this would be good. You have the ability to drop JG in with us?
Yes. Let's bring our guest up here.
This is a discussion. All these discussions are ones that he'd be able to get into with us.
Well, it's your guest, Jimmy. If you announce him, you bring him up. Who we talking to today?
JG, welcome to the show. This is the Robin Freeland Show here at the Oracle Broadcast Network. JG is an author, and now the reason that I asked him on was because I listened to a podcast. JG, welcome to the show, by the way.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, and we'll talk about a few things. I want to talk about this an article that you wrote, but the reason I had you on is because you were talking. The one thing you were talking about during this podcast was, why do we need to be ruled, man? Why do we need rulers? Why do we need it at all? And I think that if you just spend a couple of seconds explaining how people can find you on the internet, right, and then we'll just move on from there. How's that?
That sounds good to me, man. Well, basically, my website is aotmr.com, and that's the acronym for my book, Alchemy of the Modern Renaissance. It was just released last year. From what you guys have been talking about so far while I've been linked in on the show, you guys would probably be pretty interested in most of the content. Kind of much like somebody was saying a couple minutes ago, a few years I just kind of sat back and thought, why does it have to be this way? You know what I'm saying? The majority of my life was planned for me in a direction that I didn't even want, and that's the situation that 99.9% of the people on Earth have. And, I started to think, is that really a good situation for humans to be in? And if all of this has been planned out for all of us, and none of us are happy with the macrocosm, which what's playing out on the global stage and in the environment and all this, if we're not happy with what we're collectively doing as a species, yet we're walking on somebody else's track, I think we should start to observe that and see what we can do to improve our situation. And I started to find that if people were just able to walk their own path, they would be able to do beautiful things. But there's this element of force involved, which I signify with the government, because everything that the government does, I see as an act of violence. It's just an opinion backed up with a gun. And I know that's a cliche, but if anybody's ever been put in a cage before for some nonviolent crime, then you know exactly how I feel. So I think that everything that can be done by government can be done by people acting peacefully.
Through what, though? Through what process? Like a libertarian view of like volunteerism? Or voluntarism?
That's where I'm coming from for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Except there is a lot of voluntarists. I guess the traditional voluntarist line is, private police and things like that, and I do agree with that. However, I feel that co-ops will play a much bigger role in a free society than I think most libertarians give credit for.
We have a very successful co-op here in Tallahassee. I have a few friends that actually live there at the co-op, and it's amazing to see these guys exist and just their quality of life. It just seems like they're all sort of at peace with it, and they're just the way they operate together.
Happy.
But they're very happy and just very efficient with how they operate there. It's almost like 38 brains trying to accomplish one task, and that's just easy living. Or efficient living, I should say.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I mean, it's not the kind of situation where you have, like with communism, where everybody's forced to put their chips in. In a situation with a co-op, everybody puts in their effort, but they are still able to get their own chunk of the pie at the end of the day. And there's a lot of profit sharing going on, so the employees have just as much of a decision-making process in the whole deal, and they have more incentive to work harder. I've worked at a place that was kind of set up like this, where the employees had decision-making abilities and profit-sharing abilities, and everybody cared about their job a lot more and got things done a lot better. So I think that in a more free society, we would have a more free workplace, too. And that is one point that I really like to drive home from a libertarian standpoint, because a lot of people think, those libertarians will just have corporations running everything, and you'll just have this big greedy capitalist boss or whatever. And I really don't think that that's what would happen if people were able to walk their own path.
Right, absolutely. Right. Yeah, I've looked into the whole idea of voluntarism, and it's really been turning me on lately. The more I look into it, the more I like it.
And the thing of it is, sorry, Ryan, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but one of the greatest things about it is you don't need to wait to start. I mean,
true.
You know what I'm saying? You can take that frame of mind in your own home, and try to maybe transfer it to your community, and if you can't, to your friends. And when start your own community.
When I do contrast the comparison and I look at a situation and I say, no, how would volunteerism work in this situation here? It always seems like it would be more efficient, more humanitarian.
Well, if you get all the people involved that are going to be affected to be making the decisions, then you have a more complete decision or a more complete, solution than if you're just letting a group of guys somewhere decide.
That is true. Yeah, there is a lot more of a thought process going on there instead of looking at kind of one angle of it. And it seems in this country, in this day and age, is a corporate angle, not a citizen angle to decisions made.
Consumerism keeps us just like, the Roadrunner just...
Damn you, Edward Bernays!
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, here's a question, JG, that I like to ask people. What would you do? What would we do? All right, what would you do if tomorrow it all changed? If everything did, if all of a sudden out of the sky came the Office Max easy button, bing, and then we hit it, and tomorrow everything was the way that we all want it to be. I mean, would we still? I just have a feeling that there's, a lot of us that still wouldn't be satisfied. That wouldn't, you know what I'm saying? But I think maybe there's an evolution that needs to go on within ourselves.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't think it's as easy as just flipping that switch, because I personally believe that the kind of society that we are talking about is a part of humanity's consciousness evolution. So, for example, maybe 1,000 years ago or so, we didn't bathe, arranged marriages were commonplace, slavery was commonplace, people believed all sorts of crazy things. Yet that was their paradigm, you know what I'm saying?
They had vitamins back then, huh?
Yeah, right. And then after a while, as people went through experiences and learned things, and you know, I guess a lot of it had to do with the children as well. So I think that what we are experiencing right now, as far as the government puffing out its chest, starting a whole bunch of trouble while it's in the process of collapse pretty much, this time, I believe, is one of those times where people are going to be able to learn a lot. And it might get difficult for a point in time to where people are going to have to get back to their communities and they're going to have to grow food. And I think that's an inevitability when the Federal Reserve notes become completely worthless. People are going to have to find out how to strengthen their own communities, and they're going to have to find out how to do it peacefully, and that's going to be their only option. So since that's their only option, that's what's going to snap people's heads out of their rear ends to actually be able to, you know, act in a civilized manner, because you know how people are. That they have to learn the hard way, you know what I'm saying? And I think a part of this collapse that we're seeing is going to teach humanity a big lesson. At least that's my optimistic point of view, you know?
It's going to relegate me to an I told you so. I got to go to all these parties in the future and go, I told you so, dumbass. And they'll go, oh, you got me. All right, yeah, economic collapse.
You could probably already do that today.
I know, I do actually get a little mileage off of it already, but it depends who you're talking to. If they're left wing or right wing. If they're left wing, they say, what are you talking about? 4 more years, 4 more. I'm like, shut the hell up, you idiot. But if people are apolitical or right wingers, they go, I know, you were totally right, bro.
Hey, let me ask you a question, JG. So what are we going to do? How do we help the people in the cities? I mean, to me, it seems like that's the biggest issue. See, I mean, if you look at the UN and the Agenda 21 and the ICLEI and Sustainable Development, the entire push, the move to population centers, you know, to move us away from nature, away from, you know, our mother, you know, the Mother Earth, and our, you know, away from, you know, the things that are good for you. What are we going to do? I mean, at that point, then we're relying on these mega corporations to feed everybody, and we already know they use GMO crops and horrible pesticides, terrible fertilizers.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I mean, I'm out in a rural area too, so Agenda 21. All that eminent domain, that's all something that I definitely keep a close eye on.
Did you hear my eminent domain story?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I was listening to that.
God, man, my grandmother could be a million. She could have been just completely stinky, filthy, loaded rich right now if she just kept that property for another few years and then sold it, because, my God, the property value on Beacon Hill in Boston, just through the roof. And she had literally an apartment building with 5 or 6 units in it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I digress.
Yeah, no, I remember hearing that story. It's out of control. It happens all the time, unfortunately. But I think, yeah, you're right. In the cities is where the cities are going to be most hard hit by the economic collapse, because people in cities are more dependent upon this whole thing. Out in rural communities, you know, your neighbor might be a farmer. Or you know, you
if you live in the city, you have to have money. Period,
exactly. You have to trade with their dollars. So there's a lot of urban gardening projects that are starting up and co-ops, as I mentioned. But I think another important aspect to this is people starting their own either for free services or, you know, paid services that replace the services that are going to be dwindling away from the government. Now, for example, in Detroit, the people in Detroit don't even call 911 anymore, because 911 doesn't respond to calls in most areas in Detroit. They just don't even respond anymore, because they know that 90% of the time it isn't going to be a revenue-generating crime.
Right.
So they don't even go out there. To fill that need, people in the community actually have started their own private defense firms. Now, some of these are, like I said, some of these are paid services where everybody in the community chips in a couple bucks to these guys who actually legitimately keep an eye on them and don't go and tackle them if they're smoking a joint down the street. And I think that's another really important aspect of this, and just shows that we can help each other in our communities, and we don't need, one central planner 500 miles away to decide our future or to decide how we'll be protected.
You go back to the story that I've mentioned a few times from last year, where in Hawaii there's a community near a national park, and the road had been washed out, and they'd been waiting, for over a year for like a $4 million grant from the government and and then for them to come in and fix it. And after a while, they just got sick of doing it. So the locals, the business owners in the community got together. They fixed the road themselves in like 2 weeks for like $4,000 or $5,000 or $8,000, something like that. I mean, we don't need to be ruled. 2, we don't need the government. At one time I always thought, well, we need them for our roads and all that. No, we have people that'll get together. If we didn't have the government, we would still have most of the things we have now.
I'll tell you right now, though, it's going to be it would be a messy transition, I think, because there's so many miseducated, so many politicized, so many...
It's going to happen anyways, though, is what I'm saying.
Well, I agree with that, yeah, but I'm just saying it would be a messy transition.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people would fight the system that they think, the system that enslaves them. It's like we have Stockholm Syndrome going on. The people that are enslaved and abused by the system, they protect it and defend it like it's nutritious or something. It's so disgusting.
Yeah, but
I agree with that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'll wait for you, man.
I was just going to say that is why the whole aspect with the next generation is such a big deal, and how we treat our children. Because a lot of the reasons why these people are all messed up, like the people that we're talking about, is because they've lived in authoritarianism their whole life. Yeah. From the home to the school, that is the reality that they are used to. So, I mean, that's why it's so impossible to pull those people out of it. So I think that as far as schooling and as far as just our species' attitude towards children in general, as far as treating them like fourth-class citizens pretty much, is a lot of the reasons why these people grow up to be such broken adults that are so easy to take advantage of. So I think that we definitely need to look at the next generation, because right now we're building a foundation by putting out all these ideas and talking about the things that we're talking about. And this whole process might take generations
I think it
complete.
will. JG, hold that thought. We got a break coming up. We'll be right back after this. This is the Rob and Freeland Show with our guest JG Vibes here at the Oracle Broadcast Network. Oh, and we're back with the Rob and Freeland Show. Hey, the things that drew me to you were your ideas of, we don't have to wait for permission. We can start doing things for ourselves and helping each other and helping the people in our, communities and our families and our loved ones.
Well, thanks, JJ. I appreciate that. That's
you
really
too,
nice.
Rob. Absolutely. I mean, we shouldn't be, feel guilty about anything we do, Rob, because you and I both talk about the same thing. You don't have to wait. I mean, there are a lot of things you can do right now and change yourself, change the way you view things, the way you treat people.
If you only knew, my friend, if you only knew.
Yeah, JG, sorry, man.
Well, I like what you said there, and basically what you guys just described is something that I've been getting really into lately, which, I mean, I've kind of heard about here and there, but recently, once I kind of discovered what it was all about, I've been getting all into it, and that's basically a strategy called agorism, agorism, and that's kind of a lot of the stuff that we're talking about now. Like, instead of waiting around for the government to do something, if there's some hole in your community, there's some problem, think about how you can fill that need or how you can solve that problem. You know what I'm saying? Like what the people in Detroit did with their you know, their private or for free defense
protection,
companies.
yeah.
And or these people with the roads, building their own roads in Hawaii. That would be another example of this. So you guys are totally right. I'm definitely on the same page with you there. And that's really how we're going to do it, bit by bit. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. We've got to end the wars. You know, the war on drugs, the war on poverty, the war on terror, the war on illiteracy. These things are draining us, and they're like a yoke on growth. They keep us
I agree.
all.
You can't have a war to fix anything. I mean, it's like instead of solving a problem, let's have a war on it. Like, it just doesn't make no sense.
No, absolutely not. Now, what about let's specifically talk about the drug war, because this is one of the things that I talk about a lot, man. Is my main concern with the war on drugs is the outrageous violence associated with it on both ends, and the reason is, one, the prohibition, the penalties. And then there's the money. My
huge thing is the money. No, I guess the humanitarian angle is a huge part, probably the most important part. But the money alone, my God, we're talking 30 to 40, even higher now. I think they budget even more.
Yeah, and that's the root of all the violence, is how much money is involved.
Oh my God! And that's just the budget for what the government spends on the war on drugs. Think about the security industrial complex, the health industry. I mean, the list goes on and on to how many people have their fingers in the pot there, all being precipitated by the war on drugs.
Absolutely, and something that I mentioned that is right here, right in front of me in this article that JG wrote is immediately when you put when something's banned or prohibited, and I use the example of smoking in jail, prison, as soon as they cut off cigarettes, an immediate black market opened up where, you know, not where once a pack of tobacco that cost 17 cents now fetches $80 to $100, and cops are involved. It became violent immediately.
It has to, with that much money involved.
Yeah.
That's and that's exactly what's going on here with the drug war. I mean, it's gotten so bad. There's so much drugs and so much competition. You can see it in the quality of the product. Heroin and cocaine are 80 to 90% pure and cheap as hell in historic comparison. Why? Because there's so much drugs in our streets, so much competition between drug dealers. They're all trying to undercut each other. They're all trying to sell the purest and the best stuff so that they can attach that brand to them to drive up their sales. I mean, it's bad.
It would immediately reduce violence, immediately. And I think you'd agree with me, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, could nobody in this day and age could imagine, like, Miller Lite and Budweiser, you know, in a shootout over customers, you know what I'm saying? But that was happening in the 30s, you know what I'm saying? There were gangsters blowing each other away over alcohol. And now, I mean, yeah, sure, there's still alcohol-related deaths. People still drive, do crazy things. But there's no massive black market, which is
with organized
totally
crime,
destroying communities. Exactly.
No St. Valentine's massacres over it.
Completely. And I think that if you compare that time in history to what we're seeing right now, it becomes so clear, you know, how differently things would be.
Absolutely, brother. I use the tobacco thing. I seen it exactly. I mean, I seen everything that happened that I read about in the history books just right before my very eyes, immediately.
Can you guys believe historically how they amended the Constitution to ban alcohol, and then it got so bad that they had to amend the Constitution again to remove it?
Yeah. I mean, here's a question that people ask me. Well, then so what are you saying? You want your daughter smoking pot? No. But what I don't want is my daughter, if she does smoke pot, to get robbed and murdered because she had
treated like a criminal. No, treated like a criminal.
Caught and tased on the side of the road and treated like a criminal.
Treated like a violent criminal. And then, you know what? She's obviously not a violent criminal. Then she goes to jail and she's trained and taught to become a violent criminal.
Or she rapes and commits suicide or something. I mean, that's ruined. What I'm more. Yeah, exactly.
It's over what?
I'd rather have her smoke pot and then just deal with than all the other auxiliary issues.
Right, and then forever she's going to have that mark on her record. Yep. I mean, that just ruins somebody's life.
It does. Over what? For what? The whole thing was because of your health. It's bad for your health. But wait a minute, you just destroyed my life over the whole legal process. It wasn't the joint that actually did the harm to my life. It was your laws and your correctional process. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, even with the children aspect, one of the things that I put in my article is that in Portugal, where they decriminalized drugs, there has been a massive decrease in teenage drug use. And, I mean, even look in our own country where alcohol is legal and drugs are illegal, and if you're a teenager, it's easier to get your hands on drugs than it is alcohol, and alcohol is legal. Just because of the social norms and the parents and stuff like that, I mean, that controls it better than the government does.
Last time I checked, they weren't checking IDs to buy an 8-ball.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Hey, before we go any further, guys, before I forget, I'd like to thank the people over at UCY.TV for simulcasting my show and JG's show. Thanks, guys. That's UCY.TV. Sorry. Shameless plug, but they're my friends, and I'm going to plug them.
No, we got to give them some appreciation.
Absolutely.
I'm very, very appreciative of anybody who's willing to pick up any show and simulcast it and broadcast it themselves. I mean, yeah, that's how this whole thing works. So thank you so much.
Thanks to everybody. Yep.
Yeah. So we got about 2 more minutes here. Continuing with this conversation, it's a pretty interesting conversation. It's one of those conversations, man. We could just do show after show after show about just how rotten these policies are historically. You gave the example of Portugal. Wasn't there a recent ruling in Spain to decriminalize drugs as well?
I heard something about that, but I didn't see any. I never saw an article or anything.
Pretty sure we just covered that recently, JJ. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. An article on Spain itself, and they gave examples from Portugal, and of course the historical examples we have from the Netherlands, where we saw a spike in usage across the board with drugs in the Netherlands, and then a short time later we saw the numbers start to fall. And now, the study that I read was about 10 or 12 years out from the change in legislation in the Netherlands, and they showed that the amount of people that were using drugs in general, not just marijuana, all drugs, was far less than before the initiative took place. So it's just the same thing would happen here. Sure, we'd have a spike in people using drugs here. It might last 5 or 10 years. It might last even a little longer. But eventually, historically, there's never been another example that shows otherwise. We would see a massive decrease in use. You know why?
Yes.
You know why? Because it gets in your way.
The social norms would change.
Right. That's what happened in the Netherlands, man. People feel bad for addicts over there. They realize that these people are almost crippled. They're never going to have a good standard of living. They're never going to have a successful life being an addict to a drug. So they feel bad for them. They don't incarcerate them. They pour their hearts out.
Incarcerating them gives them 3 hots in the cot. I mean, here's what happens if you could spend the next 8 or 10 years in and out of custody in drug rehabs. I mean, we get rid of the drug war. We have maybe the issues of abuse, but we don't have all this violence and corruption. DEA goes away. CIA loses all their funding. All right, yeah. So I'll put that on hold, Rob.
We'll come back. We got our guest, JG Vibes. We got Jules. We got JJ and myself, Rob Chowder. One more segment, guys, on the Roundtable edition of the broadcast.
Oh, what a way to come back in from a break. Feel good music to make you feel good. Welcome back to the Rob and Freeland Show. Last segment here with JG Vibes on the Rob and Freeland Show. JG, for the last segment, first of all, we'll start the segment off by plugging your website again, which is AOTMR.com, right? AOTMR.com.
Yeah, AOTMR.com, and my radio show now is on UCY.TV, and that is Voluntary Hippie Radio, and that's on every Wednesday from 10 to 12.
I like the name of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and he does a good show, man. I listen to it. That's why I wanted to talk to him, because what
what would be really cool?
About what?
If we had just like another hour with JG here, and
wouldn't that be pretty wicked?
That would be really cool. That would be. Oh, wait a second. The James Freeland Show is coming up next.
The Jim Freeland Show.
I love that intro. That's really cool. You know what sucks, though, is sometimes you don't hear
I know, man.
the very intro part. It gets cut off by, I don't know, a Nazi, some fascist.
Because it's so quiet, yeah.
Yeah, it's so quiet. You have to listen for it. But if you listen right for it, the Jim Freeland Show. I love it. It's great. I like the good intro, Jimmy. All right, we got one more segment here, though, on the Robin Freeland Show. I want to thank all you guys for tuning in today. If you missed any part of the show, you want to check it out later, go to the archives at either robinfreeland.com. You have access there, or instant access, I'd say 10 minutes after the completion of the show. You can check out this show in the archives at oraclebroadcasting.com. And if you're an Oracle Broadcasting member, 128K stream for you. Yeah, good quality. Good quality to hear the podcast and stuff. If not, you get it in streaming 8K. 8K? No, 16K. These are the greatest. And if you compare it to the 128K, it's like, whew, night and day. Yeah, I've got a date, actually, Jimmy, after the show. It's going to be Jules, JG, and yourself. All right, we've got Kevin in Minnesota in the call queue. I think we should bring him on and say hello. What do you guys think? Should we have him in the conversation?
Let's see if he has a question for JG.
Kevin in Minnesota. Always a pleasure, my friend. You have a question for our guest here, JG?
JG or Kevin?
I'm asking Kevin in Minnesota.
I get it. First of all, cuckoo cuckoo.
What's up, Kevin? How are you, buddy?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much.
You sound a little under the weather. What's up with your voice? You sound a little off.
No, I had a full weekend at Shangri-La. At an outdoor festival.
I know, but that place is awesome, man. I've always wanted to get out there.
And,
you've got festival voice. That's what it is.
Well, you know, at the festival, I am known as the Megaphone Man.
Ah, yes, my friend.
The best purchase I ever had was a $60 megaphone from Radio Shack 12 years ago.
Is that how much they cost? Oh, that's what they cost 12 years ago. What do they cost now? You think $100 for a decent one?
They're $100. I actually bought a brand new one this year. But with what your guest today is talking about and everything, I absolutely agree with it. But you have to do something about it. And this weekend, I announced at the outdoor festival around 3,000, I think they said the count was, that if nobody has made up their mind on who to vote for in Minnesota for senator, I said, write my name in. And so I told 3,000 people for Minnesota, Senator of Minnesota, to write in Kevin Shores. I bought a web domain. It's called Write for MN, WRITE, the number 4 MN. Hopefully it's going to be up shortly. And I also bought a domain called The Right Campaign. And my point of this is that I don't want to be on the ballot. I want people to select me on their own initiative. That they've seen what I've done, they know what I'm about, and they decide it. Plus, I want to start a new political party and call it the Cannabis Resolution Party. And the whole platform...
You've been busy, huh? Jeez.
That's awesome.
The whole platform is the cannabis plant. Because if you look at Maslow's hierarchy and you plug cannabis into it, you can fill Maslow's hierarchy. Wow. And that's the thing, is that we all need our basic needs of food, shelter, and clothing. And with the cannabis plant, you can do this.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Kevin's a man after my heart because man, oh man, brother. It's about freedom, really, man.
Well, and there is a slight little selfishness of why I'm doing it, because as a disabled veteran with Gulf War illness and taking pharmaceutical drugs that are ripping apart my kidneys and my liver, and every time I ask them if I can do cannabis, for my pain relief, they just laugh at me and they're like, no, we'd rather you take these harmful drugs that will slowly kill you and cause ridiculous repercussions on it. And so I'm like, if I'm ever going to be able to use cannabis medicinally, I'm going to have to become a senator.
Yeah. Listen, Kevin, I personally, hold on, JG, just 2 seconds. I personally watched a girl with lupus and polio go from walking around with a walker, with wheels with a walker because she couldn't walk, to getting off the pharmaceuticals and just using cannabis as medicine. And she walks without a cane right now. I mean, she's still got a lot of problems, but man, I mean, if we could just, here in my state, if I was just allowed to make her real medicine. See, it's about health, it's about freedom, it's about, I mean, go ahead, man, JG. I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, I was just saying that with Kevin, man, I'm sorry with what he's dealing with, and I can totally relate because I myself, I haven't been through what you've been through by any stretch, but I have debilitating stomach issues that, like, I can't even really eat most of the time. And, you know, the doctors tried to put me on all sorts of, you know, the pharmaceutical medication, and it wasn't even painkillers or anything, but it made my condition even worse. And then years later, you know, I discovered that if I smoke a little bit of weed, I have an appetite, I'm not sick, I feel better. So, you know, I chose that route, and in the past couple of years, I've been thrown in a cage multiple times, lost a job over it, just because I'm trying to improve my physical condition. So, you know, right on with what you're doing, man, and keep on going.
Hey, gonna hold it right there, actually, folks. That's actually our time. Yeah, we'll see you back here tomorrow.
UCY.TV is an up-and-coming investigative media platform designed to give you a voice on the platform of your choice. Video, live radio, podcast, just to name a few. To learn more on what UCY can offer and how you can be a part of UCY.TV, simply email us at contact.ucytv@gmail.com. That's contact.ucytv@gmail.com.
And welcome to the Jim Freeland Show here at the Oracle Broadcast Network. Welcome to everybody. You can find the Jim Freeland Show actually at againstthewall.info. The chat room is at againstthewall.info. Those of you who have grown accustomed to watching the Jim Freeland Show on video, uno momento, por favor. I'll have it up and going right away. Call-in number today. I think we still have Kevin on the line from the last show. My guest today for the Jim Freeland Show is JG Vibes. His website is AOTMR.com. And we're going to continue on with some enlightening and insightful and, from the soul sort of talk. I noticed, I knew in my heart after just hearing you say, do we really need to be ruled, that you would be on board with me on the medical marijuana or medical cannabis, medicine, medicinally, recreationally. I don't think it really matters. It's the prohibition in my book that is causing the problems in America with drugs. It's the classification and the prohibition that causes the violence. And I want to see an end to that. I want to see an end to my brothers and sisters being labeled criminals or delinquents. I want to see an end to the violence that's being committed to my sons and daughters, over a plan. And not only just that, even the pharmaceutical drugs. Yeah, meth is horrible. I had a horrible meth problem for several years. It took being kidnapped, beaten almost to death, rolled up in a sheet to quit. But it would.
What I wonder about that meth and stuff though is if cocaine was legal, right? If cocaine was never made illegal, I wonder if crack and meth would have even ever been invented.
Probably
because
not.
I think that stuff was invented because people couldn't get their hands on coke, right? And then that stuff ended up being 10 times worse.
Yeah, and then they pump it into the streets and with the.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Well, and it's not just the violence committed by gangsters and thugs. It's the violence committed by the state on us over it. Violence begets violence. Everything can't state. The only thing state has is violence, and if that's where we have evolved as a species is violence is the answer to everything. The only way, compliance, violence, punishment. Then obviously, it's not our generation that's going to see the change, man. And we have to do the right thing, and that is to teach our children, right, man?
Oh yeah, definitely. We need to lay down a solid foundation of ideas for the next generation, and we need to teach the next generation what it's like to be free. Through our action, through negotiating with them instead of yelling at them and trying to mold them into what you want. And what you were talking earlier about prohibition and about, it doesn't matter even if it didn't have medical value, it shouldn't be illegal. And I completely agree with you there, and I think that kind of goes to a little bit of a deeper issue about inanimate objects being banned, because I think that that's something that throughout history, that these control freaks, whoever they have been, in earlier parts of history it was mostly religious based, so they would be able to throw people in dungeons for possessing any kind of sacrilegious material or anything like that. So and then things got more free in America, and then they had to find alcohol. And then once the alcohol prohibition ended, if you look at what the drug enforcement agents in America were saying, like Harry J. Anslinger and people like that, they were saying straight up, we need a new object to replace alcohol that we can justify these massive bureaucracies for, and that we can, I've heard some activists call the drug war a Swiss Army knife for cops, as far as if they want to get in your house,
yeah, man, it's free reign, man. You know what I mean? It's like automatic, and now they've done away with probable cause pretty much. They just say drug war, suspected drug war. They come in and find anything. They can find aloe vera drying in your closet.
Well, they can even look into your power records now and your phone records and everything without probable cause to see if you're suspected of, growing.
Yeah.
But with my last charge, I was driving to work at night, and I got pulled over for not having my emissions done. I guess, they sent me something in the mail, and I didn't get it because I had just moved. So was supposed to get the emissions done on my car, but it wasn't done. So they pulled me over. Car didn't smell like weed or anything. I wasn't driving crazy. I acted completely normal. But because of the fact that I had a prior marijuana conviction on my record on his little computer when he pulled me over, right away he has an attitude with me, and he tries to get me out of the car. And I say, why? Am I being detained? I ask him all the questions that they say you're supposed to ask on the YouTube videos and stuff, And he freaked out and ripped me out the window. And he had 4 other cops there with tasers and stuff. So, there's no probable cause. There's no Fourth Amendment. It's all out the window. And then they tried to say that I resisted arrest on top of that. So I totally had to plea down and just take the probation and get through with it. Because then my judge was an 80-year-old ex-cop. So, yeah, there's no... And all that stuff that they say that we have to protect ourselves, it's not... It's not there. It doesn't matter, Like you were saying about the Constitution earlier, I mean, the ideas that are embodied in the Constitution are wonderful ideas. But if these clowns can just make an amendment to make inanimate objects illegal and then, 15 years later have to totally amend that, that doesn't really seem like a binding document to me,
Nope. Well, it hasn't been used. The thing of it, my view of it is like this. If it hasn't really helped me so far, why am I going to count on it to help me in the future? I mean, they've used it they've used it to essentially turn me into a slave in my own country. I can't even leave the United States now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, the ideas embodied in it are great, and a lot of them we should totally, take with us into the future. But I think the idea that there's a piece of paper that's going to hold back oppression, it doesn't seem to be what has happened so far, especially if they could keep on rewriting it,
Yeah, absolutely. They can rewrite it. What good is it if they can? I mean, to them, in their view, in their eyes.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it, and I think a lot of people point to that, and the Supreme Court's totally corrupt, and they can change all this at a whim. So it's if you can rewrite the rules as you go, and what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And everybody, in 1984, where it was nobody remembered what it was like before the change of power or whatever, or before things got real bad, and that's kind of how it is today. Nobody remembers Prohibition.
No, and and when we talk about, do we really need a government? Or do we, the things that we talk about, like natural law, people just, the public at large thinks I'm talking about, going out there and ripping up all the stop signs and, you know what I mean? Taking down all the one-way signs and setting buildings on fire. No, that's not what we're talking about, but a large, bloated, gigantic, centralized federal government is not working for us. And even in some cases, our big, giant, bloated state governments aren't working for us. And we do have other forms. We have our local communities, our local town governments, and even county governments. I mean, you're more apt to be heard and represented by people who live in your community,
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I think that in these situations, a lot of people think that it is the government that puts these one-way signs up and does all this. But no, it's the community and the people agreeing on things. The government is just the supervisor that sits there, you know, on his lazy behind and just, you know, points his finger and tells us what to do. But, I mean, think about it this way. A lot of people, if you would ask, who defines the English language, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people would say that, oh, well, the dictionary does. And at face value, that may seem correct. But what if you know, Merriam-Webster's put out an edition tomorrow that said that the word up meant to walk towards the floor? Would everybody just say, oh, man, had it wrong all along?
Yeah, oops.
You know?
Wow, was I wrong?
Yeah, so, I mean, people would say, oh, no, like, you know, this is screwed up here because everybody in our community has agreed that this is the way it is. Just because the authority has documented it the wrong way doesn't mean, you know, that that's the way it is. And that may seem like a little bit of a stretch, but it kind of shows you that just because there is an authority of something, a so-called authority that puts these rules down, does not mean that those rules came from that authority. And it doesn't mean that we need those authority or that authority to have those rules.
Absolutely. I mean, people just think, well, people assume, and actually we do it too. Maybe not you, but I do occasionally. Just assume that everybody else, everybody but you, is an idiot and can't be trusted to not drive 100 miles an hour down a road filled with children and pets. You know, I'm just saying that people don't give themselves any credit, or you know what I'm saying? We're not what we've been made out to be by the colleges and universities, a cancer on the planet. That's not what we were meant to be, and that's not what we are at heart as a species. We've been horribly perverted and badly mismanaged.
Yeah, and I think that people have problems coming to terms with the idea that what's going on right now is not cool, it's not natural, it's not right. So everybody's just like, oh, well, that's human nature, that's the way it's supposed to be, so I'm just going to close my eyes and go along with the flow. And when they have that kind of perception of human nature, they think that everybody around them is a total maniac. And then when they turn on the news, they're totally, you know, reconfirmed of that. But on the mainstream news, all you hear about is how your neighbor's out to kill you. You don't hear about the government poisoning the food or killing millions of people overseas or throwing your son or daughter in a cage for smoking a plant, you know?
Exactly. And that, or, you know, giving them autism or it's just a whole plethora of things they do to us. If people were to just sit down and objectively look, not like, jumping in front of a car and then screaming, that you got hit by a car or, anything like that, but just sit down and objectively look at not just what state has done to you over your life, the course of your life, whether it was through taxes or regulations or some sort of compliance, or and sit back and look at what it could do to you. Think about it for a minute. Think about how horribly bad things could go wrong for you because of the violence, because of the compliance, because of where the authority, it's a system, it's a giant bureaucracy. It's not even humans. Humans just get sucked into it and get addicted to the crack that dribbles out of it. It's a bureaucracy that just keeps on turning. It was created maybe by humans scientifically, but it's a beast that's been set loose that's really unstoppable. This giant bureaucracy, it doesn't matter what human you put in it. The fines will still go out. You'll still get the pink slips in the mail. Humans are all interchangeable is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. Even if everybody, all of the elites, and everybody in all of these positions disappeared today, all of the ideas that allowed them to, pretty much take ownership over other people would still exist, and other people would fill that void. This is why you hear everybody talk about the vacuum of power that that would come if a government were to disappear, and that is true.
And it would be filled.
But that's why you need to overcome the paradigm, the ideas. That's the real target.
Well, yeah, and we owe it. No, and we owe it. I mean, if there is no easy button where there's an epic battle where, you know, dark versus light, where good battles evil, then we, even though it may seem fruitless and there's no immediate reward, have to plant the seed for tomorrow, man. It doesn't matter that you're not going to be able to see it fruit. You owe it. I mean, it's your duty to the planet, to the species, to plant the seed, man.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think that whole idea of needing immediate results and immediate gratification is really beaten into our heads in school, man. Like you know, with the whole way that the testing is set up and just if you've ever read any of John Taylor Gatto's work and some of the stuff he says about the underlying things that you're taught in school, I forget what the actual phrase was that he used, but it was basically like, you know, you learn compliance, you learn obedience, you learn that, you know, everything is decided by someone in authority. And we carry all of these idiosyncrasies from school, I think. And one of them is definitely this sense of, oh, if I can't fix it overnight and it's a long-term project, then why am I even getting involved, you know? And I think that definitely has a lot to do with, you know how in school, like, if the teacher was saying something that was completely retarded and you wanted to raise your hand and argue, everybody would look at you like, why are you doing this? Why are you wasting our time here? We just all want to just drone off here and not pay any attention and just shake our heads and just learn what we need to learn for the test. Why are you getting all involved? And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you're not even allowed to have open discussion. Try disagreeing with a college professor. I mean, disagreeing logically with an open discussion, not hostile or anything like that, and they will immediately become hostile and shut you up and tell you this is not part of the curriculum, it's not on your syllabus, you know, if you don't like it, get out.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
JG, you're absolutely right, just in the comment about the kids looking at you, because I was that kid. I was that kid that always asked questions and people would roll their eyes and say, Joel, why are you doing this? But you know what? That teaches critical thinking, and they don't want that to happen anymore. I encourage it with my child, and she can drive me completely batty with all the questions. But you know what? We're missing that now, and if we don't have that, we're doomed. You need to question. And you're also right, JJ, about the college professors. I mean, they discourage questions. They plow through it as fast as they can, get through the material so they can get off to whatever their main goal is in research. It's not about learning. And I had that discussion with one of my professors. It wasn't about learning. It was about trying to cram through as many people as they could.
Yeah, and trying to cram their personal agendas into your head.
Exactly. And it's total BS. Our education system is broken. And why are we putting college kids into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt? I mean, this is the biggest scam on the planet. Education should be free, and with the internet, it can be. We have Ivy League universities that have their entire courseware online, and you could be getting an education from top-notch educators and have your choice of 10 of them for free. It's not about the test. It's about the passion to learn, and it's a complete scam.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And I've started to notice with the people that I get.
They only teach a few things. It's the same every school. I mean, come on, man. Every school in America, if it's one subject, they all teach the same freaking thing. There's no variety. There's all schools. Curriculum is handed down from the government to all schools.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, with these universities, I mean, you guys bring up a really good point, because a lot of these kids that I get into debates with, that are fresh out of college, their heads are even more screwed up than somebody just out of high school.
Absolutely. They're completely brainwashed.
I'm so disappointed in like the immense amount of excitement and knowledge in some of these people, but they're just totally misled down the wrong path.
Yeah, and they couldn't survive. They couldn't find their ass without a GPS. I say both hands, but they couldn't. They couldn't find their ass with both hands. They need a GPS to get to the bathroom. I mean, these are people, you know, that have just spent years being educated. They come out so, you know, if you could just keep feeding them, you know, iPads and iPod and I like to call them iSuppositories and iPons. If you keep feeding them new iPons and trinkets all their life, they'll continue to think they've been successful, and you know that if you have less than 5 iPods, you know, an iPad for each day of the week, that you aren't successful. And it goes the same way to the inner city and to the minorities. A black guy, his vision of being a successful person is exactly what he sees as a big, fat, rich, white dude. He doesn't see, you know, a successful black man as a guy maybe that helps in his community, that has risen above, that realizes that money is just a joke. It's just a scam. Money is another form of slavery, and he helps his community, and he helps his, you know, the boys in his community become men who understand these kind of things. To me, that would be, you know, the sort of rich or the sort of, you know, man I would look up to. I wouldn't think of success as, you know, exactly what they also are taught to hate: big, fat, rich, white dudes at the same time. But they won't feel like they're successful unless they got a Cadillac and and all the same things that a big, fat, rich, white dude has. Because they've been told that.
Yeah.
Women didn't know that that their rights were being, you know, that they needed to be freed from the kitchen until they were told that, you know.
Yeah, and most of the throughout history, most of the people who were oppressed like that didn't even realize that they were oppressed, and then they were totally cool with it.
Yeah, and then they were told, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're supposed to rely on this system that we're, you know, been born into. I don't trust it. I don't want to use it. You know, and I don't feel like I have to. I understand there's risks in life, you know, and if I go and buck against the system, there's a risk that you're either going to have to be willing to take it, or you're going to have to watch life, and you're going to have to watch things through the Venetian blinds in your living room. You're going to be one of those, oh, I'm glad that didn't happen to me. But that's not my life, man.
Well, yeah, and I mean that I'll have to point back to the education system again, because that is that conformity that's bred into us. You know what I'm saying? Don't break from the mold. Don't buck the system. Don't ask questions. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's talk. Well, all right, we got a few minutes before I have one break, and that's at 12:30. I'd like to meander on over to natural law and universal morality. These are some of the things that I know that you might have an interest in. You know, I actually just reading some of the stuff that you've written, and I am intrigued.
Well, that's a lot of this. Really, what kind of set all of these ideas into my head, at least as far as non-aggression and voluntarism, because. You know, I mean, these are all ideas that I'm still working through myself, and one of the things that I found was this issue with morality, and you know, everybody has this perception of morality has to come from an authority, and the authority is allowed to break that code, and that just seems like a total system of nihilism, pretty much, where people could just make up the rules as they go, as we were talking about earlier. And if we're all created equal, then why don't we all have to abide by the same rules? You know what I'm saying? And
testify.
What was that?
I said, amen, brother, testify.
Exactly. I mean, if we have different rules for different people, I think that's a recipe for disaster. And look at what we have right now. We have this all-powerful criminal organization because we've let them get away with it just because their own rules say that they can do it. And that's really the fundamental issue here, because when you apply the same rules to them that is applied to yourself, you realize that everything they're doing is a violation of your rights and everybody else's
What's
rights.
wrong with you deciding what's moral instead of being told what's moral? We have to be told that we have the moral authority to bomb other countries. Why can't I decide what I feel is moral or not?
Well, yeah, I mean...
Am I not to be trusted? Most people, JG, could never even... Here's half the problem. It's because we've been convinced that there's an authority. We've been convinced that there are experts. And most people sitting in their living room could never imagine that they themselves could spend a few hours a day for a few weeks and then actually go and debate a person who has the title of, expert, or the title of authority, or I am with the government, and I'm here to tell you, man, 7th grade, dude. I made it through 7th grade. I never made it to 8th grade. And I could sit and debate almost any topic with almost any authority and do it logically without breaking down to insults and calling them names, unlike most of the experts or authorities, because I just would not agree with them. And once they realize that you see through it, then they will always and ever break down to insults and calling you a cook. Oh, and then next thing you know, I'll be a truther. So, people just have to have confidence in themselves that we are individuals. It doesn't matter where you are. The truth is the truth, and reality really is reality, and it's contingent upon the beholder. You can see, you can go out and see beauty, and you can see the truth. You don't have to take the word of somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it all comes down to the fact that, we all want to live in peace. You know what I'm saying? We all think that it's bad to hurt people. We all think that it's bad to take people's stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I really think that is all we need. Who cares what somebody else smokes or what somebody else does in their bedroom? I mean, that's aesthetics. That is not a moral situation, and that's what these people in authority have told us. They have told us that what you do in your bedroom is morality, and what you put into your body, that's morality. But there's no emphasis on your interactions with other people or organizations' interactions with other people, if that makes any sense. So they like to focus so much on people's personal decisions that don't affect anybody else, instead of just saying, hey, violence is bad, let's not do the violence thing.
Yeah, it's the whole idea of violence and punishment. I mean, as a species, as a race, and we all are one race, we're all one species. There's not a bunch of different races running around.
I think that's something they created to divide us so they can conquer us. I really honestly believe.
I mean, there certainly are lots of cultural differences and regional differences, that have happened over the course of time, but essentially, on a genetic level, we're 99, we're identical really, except for our facial features and the colors of our skin and things like that. We're identical on the inside. You can tell us apart.
Oh yeah, I mean our cultures are definitely unique, and that's not a bad thing.
No, that's awesome.
But it's exploited as a bad thing.
All right, we're back live. The Jim Freeland Show here at your Broadcast Network. You can email me personally at truthrising@gmail.com. My guest today, JG Vibes. Hey, what's your email address, JG?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What's your email address?
Oh, it's jgvibes@aotmr.com.
aotmr.com. There you have it, folks. Hey, you and I both expressed a point during the break that I'm sure people understand is my view on things. It's the underground. If we're going to get anywhere, it has to be done underground at the grassroots level. And one of the ways that I do it, or that I one of the things that I'm involved with is the underground sound, protest music type thing, and trying to, you know, shape or influence some of my own local music here, which I had, you know, was sort of hit and miss. I've had a little bit of luck, but I definitely believe that we need to support our local underground artists, whether they're musicians, whether they write poems, whether they do art, whether they, you know, even do murals. There's so much underground art that is racially, that is, you know, toned or tuned in to you know, the awareness. And I know you agree, right?
Absolutely. I'm definitely on the same page there. I think that we have in our culture a lot of the ideas that people carry with them come from this propaganda that's on TV, that's in their favorite music, and a lot of the mainstream stuff. So what I like to do in a lot of cases is I like to see the weapons that are being used against us, and I like to throw them weapons right back at the system. So if I kind of like to say that art and propaganda are two sides of the same coin. They're both a creation, but art is
all about who's
creation.
controlling it. You know, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. Art is a creation that like would uplift somebody's soul and inspire them, while propaganda is a creation that does the exact opposite. So if there's all this trash music out there that's lowering people's level of consciousness, then everybody who is involved in music and cares about this kind of stuff really has a perfect tool at their fingertips to raise the level of consciousness in their community, even if it's an underground music community. I mean, I work primarily in the rave scene because that's where what my company deals with. But I'm very into all other types of music, metal, rock, alternative, whatever. But you know, it kind of started for me as I needed to put together these shows. I needed to have names and themes, and some of my friends said, "Man, you're really into this philosophy stuff. Why don't you, you know, put some stuff together?" And so, you know, tax day came around, and I did an end the Fed party that was free, and you know, I've done a party called American Psycho, which had like a bunch of different corporate logos to spell out American and stuff like that. So like I try to put like underhand stuff because people don't want to go out and read a book all the time, you know?
No,
people. So you gotta hook them when they think they're being entertained. You know what I mean? And that's what the system does.
And encourage them.
That.
Because art, because music, poetry, art, these are ways that you can articulate ideas very, very precisely. You can articulate, you know, your very fiber, your core, and you can do it very precisely using art, man. And I just really encourage it, man, for people to use their inside, the inside of themselves, their core, their souls, to do whatever it is that they can do, whatever they think they can do. And it doesn't have to always be, you know, jumping up on a podium or carrying a sign. It's anything, whatever you feel like, you know, you can really use to articulate your feelings is the right thing to do, man. And art is a great way, whether it be music, you know, visual art, auditory, audio art, whatever, you name it.
Yeah, I mean, even throughout history, you know, during way back, before there was even electricity, there were people who wrote books that seemed to be about one thing, but they had so many deeper meanings and underhanded things against the establishment. And in those days, it was so impossible and so dangerous to speak out that's how people had to do their activism a lot of times, through art. That was the only option that they had available to them. And I think today we have such a more amazing ability to, you know, reach people with them.
Absolutely, brother, because you can not only articulate, but you can celebrate, because there ain't nothing like clapping your hands and stomping your feet, you know what I'm saying, and being happy with people, with other people, like sharing the experience of humanity and life with others. I mean, we lose sight of that, and I try not to, but I find myself doing the very same thing sometimes. But it's not.
Yeah, I mean,
you should not be ashamed to celebrate either.
No, not at all. And I think that's kind of what makes people feel this stuff in their soul, and you know, it's less of a downer to kind of get it through the music, and it's more of a thing that sinks into you. I remember when I started doing this research, you know, it was 1 week, like, you know, those times in your life where those transitional times when you start to come across these ideas and it seems like all this information coming at you at once. Well, I mean, I experienced that, and I would sit back and listen to, like, Bob Marley or something like that, and I'm like, wow. Like, you know, they create a world of confusion to force on us the devil's solution. Like, what is this dude talking? He's talking about what I'm reading about. And then, like, I'd put on, like, some newer, like, hip-hop or something, like Immortal Technique or Payday Monsanto, and that stuff, like, is in your face.
Yeah, it blows you away, man. And I love it.
So,
love that stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's, like, all I listen to these days. I mean, I listen to some instrumental stuff. Of course, I listen to podcasts all day long, but when I listen to music, like, it is
my
that,
friends.
Exactly. It's somebody who's on something, somebody who's talking about something, you know? I mean, there's too many.
And they're not talking about slinging boulders or, you know, scoring with 3 chicks in the bathroom at the club or whatever. I mean, they're talking about things with substance, excuse me. Things that can sustain your soul. Things like, you know, being socially active and aware of the things that are going around with you, man. I love this. This is a great interview, dude. Thanks for coming on, man.
I appreciate it too, man. We're definitely on the same page as far as that's concerned. And I mean, this is what started me on my path was music and art and I realized once it was really crazy. Once I started coming across this information and listening back to the music that I've listened to my whole life, I was like, wow, these artists were trying to speak to me for years, and I didn't even get the message until now. Like, I was just like, I just thought it was a song. I just thought it was a show. I just thought it was a movie. And no, these people that created this stuff worked really, really hard to send a message.
Yeah.
And when you have your receptors open, you can spot the messages like that. But I just think that it's a really underlooked tool in our movement. A lot of people might, you know, get into activism and say, oh, you know, that's just entertainment, that's just music, I don't have time for that. And, hey, that might be a really good tool for your activism.
Well, if nothing else, it's planting seeds, man, because young people really, you know, the arts grabs them. Because it isn't authoritarian, if you do it right, you know, and it is, and they can celebrate and they can stomp their heels and snap their fingers. And if you've got the right message, man, if you've got the message of freedom, if you've got the message of, you know, of evolution, of social, you know, socially aware issues, that, you know, and that really is a great way to, you know, to articulate your own thoughts and feelings. And, you know, people often say, well, be the change you want to be. Well, you know, that really is, you know, one way. But the thing of it is you really have to change, you know, just to be the change. You have to, you know, you have to be willing to be what you want to see. You know, if I want to be a peaceful person, then I feel like I have the right to expect or to ask or to hope for peace or, you know, something along that line. Maybe not, that may not be quite the explanation I was looking for, but.
Well, yeah, it comes down to setting a good example for people is basically what you're saying.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to change. I mean, a lot of people want to see change, but they're afraid to be different than they are. They're afraid to lose what they have. They're afraid for things to change.
Oh yeah, I talk to a lot of people that are like, dude, I'm with you on this and I'm with you on that, but I would never put my neck out like you are. And like a lot of times I don't even know what to say to those people, dude, and I just kind of move on to the next one and just let them find in their own time. I'm not totally cut people out of my life if they didn't agree with me or anything, but
right.
If somebody isn't getting it, you gotta let them get it in their own time. And
right, and there's no reason to force them into being your enemy. So we're just not going to agree on this. But that's not going to fault, that's not going to alter your course at all. Just turning somebody else into another enemy does more harm than just, well, okay, then I'll just move along. We can still be friends. We just won't talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I may be branching off into another topic here,
Good,
but I do think that it's important for our movement. I hate to put it that way, but anybody who cares about changing the world for the better to really, really think about our approach and how we handle people who disagree with us and how we handle debates. Because we don't want to be like the Republicrats in the political sphere, how they just shove a bunch of ideas down one another's throats without actually thinking about what the other person said,
Yeah,
and I think in a lot of ways our community is way ahead of that, but I think that we still have a long way to go. Because like I said earlier about throwing the establishment's tactics right back at them, one thing that they use to quite a good effect in enslaving us is public relations, as you said, or somebody said earlier about Edward Bernays and that whole monster that he created. Well, public relations is a bad thing when they use it, but we can use public relations too. We can make our ideas sound more palatable to the average person, and we can use words to make their system seem like what it really is. Because they use all this newspeak to hide it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
they develop all these words, and they have meetings about how to better present this idea, and I really think that we need to start doing that.
Yeah,
we need
I
to
agree.
start making up words. We need to create our own freaking dictionary. We got Wikipedia, even though that's edited every hour by a bunch of FBI sock puppets. We still have all these places on the internet where we can create our own words. We can make our own definitions, and we need to, because their arsenal of words is a lot bigger than ours, and they spend a lot more time on public relations, and I think that we're at a disadvantage because we don't focus on that as much.
Yeah,
a lot of people.
I think if it
Go
comes
ahead.
from a place of love and compassion, see, this is where I lose a lot of people right here, is because I talk about love and compassion and empathy as my driving motivators in life now. And, a lot of people just aren't on board with that. And if you know me, if you ever met me, I am not one of those flowery, barefoot, hacky sack, everything's bad. But man, I come from a place where I feel like, it's not propaganda. If it's coming from love, if you're using the public relations or whatever, you're not using it to force your opinion to.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean by saying us use public relations. I'm just saying us think about the sound that our voice is having on someone else's ears. And I'm coming from the same perspective as you are. Be loving with people, be kind with people, be cool with people, and be understanding. Don't try to shove ideas.
There's nothing
down
worse
their
than a Jehovah's Witness truther coming at you with a bullhorn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. That turns people off, and they don't even listen. You want people to listen. You don't want people to shut off. And so many of us that care and we're motivated to talk to other people about it, we get in these conversations where people just shut off. And that's one of our biggest obstacles. We need to find out how to overcome that. And I think a big part of it is, like you just said, we need to approach this from a more understanding and caring kind of viewpoint.
Yeah, I found if you can show somebody that you care about them, then that's a lot of the rest of it is gravy. If you can show them, prove to them, or whatever, however you want to put it, but if you can show a person that you really do care about them, and that this is something that you're passionate about, and it's coming from concern, it's coming from empathy and love, then they're a lot more apt and they're a lot more receptive. They're a lot more not moldable or even suggestible or anything, but they're a lot more apt to give you the time to, first of all, let you finish what you're, trying to articulate to begin with, and two, that they may not think just automatically, I'm going to start insulting this guy. Maybe I'll look into what he's saying, or maybe, maybe what he's saying really does make sense. Why do we need? We've been force-fed. We've been told all our life that we need to be told what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that you kind of hinted at a little bit was we can't expect to completely change somebody's mind in one conversation. You know what I'm saying? If we're talking to somebody and be like, all right, you can feel how you want to feel, but this is where I'm coming from. This is some of the research that has really brought my perspective to where it is. And, why don't you take some of this research home with you, see how you feel about it, and then we'll have a conversation. I think that that's a good approach as well.
Yeah.
But like I said, that this is one of the conversation that we're having right now. I think a lot more people in our movement need to be having, because good ideas come out of this kind of stuff, and how we approach these topics in debates and just conversations with our family and friends is vital to the spread of these ideas. We don't want to come across like Jehovah's Witnesses. That was a perfect analogy there.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy where when you walk up to the to the step, or you come up, when you show up, everybody's like, oh jeez. Oh,
dude,
no,
I was like that for a little bit. I admit. I was too, but I've learned that didn't work. You know what I'm saying?
I've evolved. I mean, I've done so much. I am completely and utterly grateful to, this community that I'm involved with, because I've become 10, just quitting drinking and becoming 10 times the father and 10 times the husband I was. I become 10 times the man, the human, the 10 times the entity that I was. And I'm blown away by some of the the generosity and some of the kindness that I found around the country through this community.
Yeah, dude, totally, man. Good for you. And I've been on kind of a similar path myself. I mean, I've definitely come from some really crazy ideas, and just by discovering what freedom is all about and having more faith in myself and more faith in humanity, I really was able to pull myself out of the gutter. And I've talked to so many people who have had that same kind of situation.
Amen, man. Preaching to the choir here, dude. I want people to like me and want me around, not, not call me and dread that I'm coming over. And hey, to be sure, some people don't want to hear what you're talking about. But if you care about them, you're not going to just alienate them and then all of a sudden stop caring about them. You're going to have to learn how to make concessions in life. Life is just, after all, a series of conflicting interests, one after the other. And if you're always afraid to take the short end of the stick, if the thought of humility threatens you or makes you feel less than, man, I'm sorry, but humility is what has kept me, the man I am, just a humble person, really, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of us are unfortunately brought up to think that's not cool. That's not. That's not attractive behavior. That's something that sissies or geeks would do and stuff. And I mean, that's totally not the truth. I mean, that's how healthy people operate, and that's how people have healthy relationships.
Yeah.
So I think that your perspective is definitely on point with my whole deal, man, and I definitely appreciate to hear that.
Yeah, man. Hey, what's the next event you're going to be involved with?
Well, right now, as far as the events go, I had some stuff going on in the summer, but you know, it's kind of slowed down as far as the speaking stuff is concerned now. Right. But I'm going to be starting my shows up again in the winter. I'm going to be doing a reunion tour, and this weekend I'm going to help set up for the Free Your Mind Conference fundraiser that they're having in Philadelphia. Mark Tassio's setting up.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I'm just going to help him out. I don't even know what I'm doing, if I'm helping with sound or whatever or anything like that.
Hey, brother, the first time I went down to help Poker Face and them guys with Freedom Palooza, I parked cars.
Nice. Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
man, anything you can freaking do, man.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere I could help in. When somebody's doing something within driving distance from me, I'm totally down to help, you know. But yeah, I just started with the show on UCY TV, Voluntary Hippie Radio. So
definitely worth checking out.
My podcast before would be whenever I got an interview, and I kind of just repost it as a podcast. But now with the show, I actually have to be on point and actually get one out every week.
Right.
So that's kind of been where a lot of my focus has been recently.
Oh, well, cool. And let's plug your website. Let's get people going there. AOTMR.com. That's AOTMR.com. You can find JG Vibes there. Links to his book, Alchemy of the Modern Day Renaissance. Definitely. I don't have it. I was going to say definitely worth reading, but
at the website you can check out a table of contents, and it's got like all 87 chapters, and it's all, you know, half of it's the negative stuff, the Monsanto, the fluoride, the banking, and then the other half is the positive stuff, the art, the internet, the future, the spirituality, the psychedelics, the marijuana, all that's in there.
Awesome. A man after my own heart. Ricky Simpson's a friend of mine. I actually have quite a few friends that are very, very passionate. Right, actually down near you in the area, I got a friend, Sean House. Yeah, he actually makes hemp pretzels and other products, and he employs locals and local farmers and local bakeries, and you know, it's just a beautiful culture and a beautiful community to be part of. Hey, JG, thank you for coming on the show today. This has been the Jim Freeland Show at Oracle Broadcasting. I'll see everybody tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed the show.
If you want to achieve in this life, you need to set your goals higher.
I'm already pretty high.
UCY.TV is an up-and-coming investigative media platform designed to give you a voice on the platform of your choice. Video, live radio, podcast, just to name a few. To learn more on what UCY can offer and how you can be a part of UCY.TV, simply email us at contact.ucytv@gmail.com. That's contact.ucytv@gmail.com.